Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Ross Bailey here, your friendly product specialist. We're going to do another Learning with Line 6, and we'll do the awkward bit, we'll get that out of the way. Let me know that everything's working and the levels are okay. This is what my voice sounds like, and this is what the guitar sounds like. Hopefully, I was messing with levels earlier, and I know there's usually issues with levels doing these things. So, yeah, now I'm just going to fill awkwardly until someone answers. And hello from Chandler, Arizona. Good evening. Good afternoon there, I guess. Morning, whatever. Sounds good. Excellent. Right. So we're going to look at using external pedals with Helix. So pedals are fun, right? And Helix has got all of the things in it, certainly everything that you could probably kind of need. But like I say, pedals are fun. You may still have your favorite compressor or favorite drive pedal or delay pedal or whatever. So how do you use those? How do you hook them up? What kind of things you can do, and some added benefits. Hi, Ivan. Thank you very much. So we'll get through that, and maybe some stuff that you didn't know as well. So, yeah, might be a short one, but I can waffle on. So here we go. So I'll show you the setup that I've got, and I'm cheating a little bit tonight. I'm actually using Helix rack, but I'm also using it with HX Stomp, because I can kind of show a couple of different things. And I'll be honest, I sold most of my pedal collection because Helix is fantastic and I just didn't need them anymore. So I'll show you what I'm using. So this is the kind of setup that we've got here. So guitar is going into the Way Huge drive, and you'll see why in a little while. And then HX Stomp, I've got 3 effects loaded in there, and that's going to be going through one of the effects loops. So I've got the drive going in the front, HX Stomp in one of the loops, and I've got in the Stomp, I have a pitch shifter loaded up, a fuzz, and a delay. And like I say, we'll sort of show you what we can do with some of those. So here is the signal flow. Now you'll see the bottom line. There's a mic. That is what you're hearing my voice through. So you can ignore that a little bit. The top line, real kind of nice and simple. Let me load that up so I can see it better. So yeah, we've got a loop. We've got a drive pedal, we've got the amp. I'm using the Cali Texas channel 1. There are the settings through 212 interstate. So favorite amp model, favorite cab model. Got the 160 ribbon on there. They're the settings, and then just a little bit of room just to cheer me up more than anything. So it's a really simple setup. And yeah, so the clean guitar sounds like that. Turn it up a little bit for me in the room. And if I kick the drive on, which is the air apparent, that's just going to give me a little bit of hair. Now, why would I need that? Well, I've got all of the drives. You know, we're talking about using external pedals. I'll tell you in a minute. So how do we get hooked up? Well, first and foremost, the thing you need to do is actually put a loop block in there. So if we get rid of that, what's the effects loop 3? So you just go to wherever you want, let's say there, go to your center return, and you go, right, I want effects loop, in this case 3, because that's what's plugged in, and we're good to go. We can ignore all this for a minute, but that's kind of where it gets a little bit cool. So essentially, guitar's coming into Helix, and then we're using effects loop 3, so you would use effects loop 3, send into your pedal, out of the pedal, into the return of effects loop 3. And it's as simple as that. So why would you use a loop rather than going in the front end? Well, if you've got like a vintage fuzz face, for example, germanium specifically, they don't like kind of buffers. Now, if you put that in one of the loops of Helix, then you're essentially going to get what's going to happen if you put a fuzz face after something that's buffered and not true bypass. Fuzz face or germanium transistors generally like to see the guitar. If you put anything kind of between the guitar with a buffer, what that's going to do is going to kill the low end, and it's going to make it sound not as good. Fine if that's the sound you're going for, but if you're using an old Germanium pedal or a new Germanium pedal, you probably want to go guitar into the pedal into Helix, okay? And that's gonna be where it's gonna sound its best. I don't have one of those, but that's kind of why the Way Huge Geisha is in there. Geisha is just called the drive. Now, one thing you might want to be conscious of when you're doing that is the actual input pad. So in your global settings, just make sure I'm doing this right. So yeah, button with the 3 lines, global settings, ins and outs, and then you'll see bottom left, there's a guitar in pad. So if you've got any pedal really that you're taking in the front end and it's got a lot of gain, then you're going to clip the input. So you might want to have that pad on and it'll just sort of smooth things out, and I'll show you the difference. So if I get this drive pedal and crank it up, so that's just my clean sound. If I turn that on, sounds great. If I turn the pad on, so it just cleans it up a little bit. But I don't have my pedals generally that loud, so we don't need to worry about that. So that's kind of the difference. Like I say, you might want something that you might have run out of the loops, you might have run out of foot switches, but generally you would put something in just straight into the front end as a go-to, or something that doesn't like any kind of buffering, like say like Germanium fuzz faces or treble boosters, something like that. So that's why you would choose one or the other. JM says, let's get out there. Can you go through all parameters, effect loop block, and any best practices to eliminate any potential hum? Yes, I can. So this is kind of where it starts to get a little bit interesting. We're actually motoring through this tonight. I might not take as much of your time up tonight. So this is kind of where it gets cool. I mean, the position is important as well, depending on the effect. So to give you a great example of that, so if I turn on I've got a Bucket Brigade delay in there and turn the loop on, which brilliant. Because I deleted it, I need to add it. Give me 2 seconds. Boom, boom. There's always something that goes wrong. There we go. So I've now put that delay essentially in front of the amp, which is absolutely fine. Fine and dandy, no problem at all. But if I put that drive on, suddenly we're going into, we're putting a delay into a drive pedal or a gainy sound, and it doesn't sound as good. Right, so this is the kind of cool thing about using the loops. You can actually, you don't have to, like on a traditional pedal board, you would have to decable it and move things around. And I've done that so many times, and it gets really boring really quickly. So the beauty of Helix is you can just get that and go, right, okay, I need that after the amp, and all of a sudden, and it's cleaner. Obviously, you have the advantage because generally, if like I say, I'm using HX Stomp for this, but if you are in the position you've got an old Memory Man or even an old Space Echo or something, they don't have like an analog drive-through. So what you can do with Helix is actually get that block and put it in a parallel path. And I've kind of talked about this before. So basically what you're seeing, can you see my arrow? Yeah, you can, marvelous. So what you're seeing is this is the guitar signal, it's coming through. This is why I always have reverb and delay in parallel paths, because that right there is my dry guitar signal. So if I just move those up there just to show you the difference, everything becomes a little bit more, a lot more kind of in your face. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. For me personally, I'll do this, and then my actual core guitar sound. So, you know, like I said, I've talked about this before, but there's my core guitar sound. And I'm just adding these effects to that sound. Yeah, if that makes sense. So, that's a pretty cool little thing that you can do. You can essentially kind of have a parallel or an analog drive-through, which works really, really well. But if you saw in the description, I talk about customizing your effects. So perfect example is an analog delay. Like say if you've got an old Space Echo or Benson Echo Rec or DM2 or something like that, they're pretty primitive effects. So you don't have the drive-through, so all of your signal is going through, so you've got the parallel path thing there. But you can also add a mix control, but the thing for me, especially with delays, is the trails. So at the moment, I've got that delay. And this is what happens if you have, actually turn that up a little bit. Yeah. If you've got an old delay and you turn that pedal off, that's what happens. Okay. Yeah, so as soon as you turn that pedal off, the delay repeats stop, and that bothers me. It's fine if it's something that you're going for and you need a dead stop at the end of a song or in the middle or something, but for me, I want those repeats to carry on. So we have this trails function. So now, imagining that I've got an old vintage Space Echo in one of the loops of Helix, when I turn that off, shall I turn it on first? So turning that loop off, I've just got my my vintage delay, and I've added a feature that I'm not even sure you could add, which is really cool. I'm sure some technical whiz could add a trails function, so if you bypassed it, those repeats carry on. But you probably don't want to do that with like an old Echoplex or something like that. So you can actually add a feature to something that it didn't have before. Same difference with the mix control. So the fashion in maybe the last 10, 15 years or something with compressors is the blend control. So you can actually blend in the clean signal, because compressors are great, but they can get a little bit too kind of sucky and too compressy. So you can blend in the original guitar signal and get back some of that attack. And that's kind of what the blend signal does. But if you look at someone like Josh Smith with his fuzz and some of the kind of quirky things he does with his pedal board, that mix control is also pretty cool. Just had a few things coming here. Ed B Metal says, I have a Line 6 Pod XT Red Bean sitting in the effects loop with stereo return. Wow. Yeah, brilliant. Like it. Evening, Terry. Ben says, hello, Ross from Portland, Oregon. Hello, Ben. So yeah, the mix control, if we're going to do kind of a Josh Smithy thing, so if we pull that over there, nope, in front of that, there we go. So turn that back on, turn my delay off. I have the Pocket Fuzz model in here. If I turn the drive off. I'll bring that mix down. Now, I'll be honest, it's probably not a sound I would use. I'll let you trousers. Cheers, John. John Cordy in the house, everyone. Go and say hello. Yeah, that's maybe not a sound I would use, but yeah, it's a cool thing. Josh Smith makes great use of it, but it means that you can kind of add a fuzz and just kind of blend in a little bit of it, or any effect. It's literally a mix control. You can add as little or as much as you want. And that's kind of similar for something like, again, if you've got a vintage kind of octaver, that works really well too, because something like a micropog, you can blend in the octaves in that. So if I turn that back on, now that's kind of prominent. So actually, I'm going to make it even worse for you. There we go. Right, that's full mix on full for the pitch. Okay, I don't want that. I want the original signal. So again, particularly with things like vintage pedals, it works great. So something like, you got an old Budbox Dynacomp. It's literally just got sustain and level. You don't have the mix control. You would have to buy another piece of gear to actually add that, but you don't with Helix. You've got it built in, which is just brilliant. Like I say, moving it around for the parallel paths. Bass players as well. I know a bunch of bass players that will maybe use a big muff, but actually have it in an external effects loop with a blend. You can do that with this. So, whilst you've got all of this incredible stuff in Helix, you might have a favorite pedal. Now, just along with that, so let's go back to this pocket fuzz as a great example. So here's my fuzz, and I'll turn the mix back up. Silly boy. So you can hear there, the level's kind of not particularly high, and I've had one of my all-time favorite drive pedals is the Radial Tone Bone. It's a big, thick, juicy kind of tube pedal, and it's awesome, but it's not very loud. And a bunch of the other pedals I had on my board at the time were really loud to get the most out and really kind of smash the front end of the amp. So what you can actually do as well with the effects loop, so you've got the mix control, you've got the trails control, but you've got level control. So when I turn that fuzz on, it's actually a level cut, and that's definitely not what you want with a fuzz. Because it's super compressed and whatnot, you want to kind of give it a little bit of a lift. So you can go in and you can go, right, okay, I need more. So you just crank the return level up, and hopefully, I'm guessing at this. There you go. So you get up to 6 dB of boost. So you can actually increase the output of the drive pedal or whatever. Again, some compressors or some modulation effects might actually give you a little bit of a cut in level, so you can boost that back up. But also, if you're using something like snapshots, then you can utilize the send function. So a great example of that, let's just give this a bit of welly. I want to just cut the level of that a little bit. So that's essentially like kind of turning the volume down on the guitar, or if you've got a volume pedal before that, just kind of lowering the input level. So again, different pedals work differently, particularly drives. They respond to different input levels and certainly different output levels. So you can basically kind of cheat a little bit. Some pedals, because of the way the circuit's designed, they sound best absolutely cranked, but that might not match up with other effects that you've got set up in Helix, or the amp model might not respond to that particularly well. So those level controls are really, really super useful. I get this question a lot, actually. So why would you use an effects loop versus a send and return? Now, I personally don't use these as loops. These are just kind of ins and outs. So send 1 through 4, I would use that if I, for example, wanted to do this and do a wet dry scenario. So that would kind of go out of there, and that would go out of there, and I would pan it hard left and right. Boom. Actually, no. There we go. Send 1 and 2. So in this instance, just so you can see, guitar's coming in, going through some stuff. I've got a split path. That's it in the reverb. Going out of send 1 and 2. Which I can do that now. And then the regular stereo 1/4 inch outs. Boom. So I would use the sends for that. personally. Same with the returns. If I go in and go, right, return 2, for example, that then is, in fact, I can put that there. So I've got my guitar, having whatever, going out of the main outputs, but completely independently of that, I've got return 2, and I can have a separate input. So that could be for acoustic guitar, or if I've got a stereo guitar, so I've got electric pickups and a piezo pickup, piezo, piezo, then you've got a separate input. So that's what I would use those for, personally. But, you know, do what you want. It's all good. There are no rules. So pull that back up there. So, I mean, that's kind of it. Hopefully, show delay parameters, please. Ooh, oh, I cannot. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. It's pretty default. Give me a mo. I'll plug the USB in, and then I'll bring that up. Give me a sec, Jimmy. There we go. That's loaded up. No, go away. Boom. Let me get rid of that. And then screen, matrix, stomp. There we go. Right. So that's what I've got in here. There's your simple pitch. It's just an octave low. And then I've got the pocket fuzz. That's where we're at with that. And then the delay, I think it was pretty stock. I think I cranked the delay time up a little bit, and that was it. Everything else was just, yeah, just as it came out of the box, basically. So that's what that looks like. Yeah, no problem at all, Jimmy. You're very, very welcome. So, I mean, that's kind of it. It's not particularly complicated, but kind of understanding some of the things that you might not think of. Like, say, if you've got a delay pedal, sort of where you would put that in a chain. So you know, there are no rules. You might like the sound of a delay before a high gain amp. I don't. I think it sounds pretty terrible. But if that's the sound you're going for, fill your boots, go for it. But being able to kind of just very, very quickly move that without decabling and so on and so forth is brilliant. The added benefit of if you've got a pedal that, because of the way the circuit works, has to be cranked, and that's where it sounds best, that return level, you can bring that down a little bit so the pedal can be at its optimum settings, particularly if you're putting it in front of an amp model that maybe doesn't like level. Or clips a certain way. If you put too much juice into it, you just, you know, tame that a little bit. Same with the send, you can actually boost that, and obviously with snapshots you could very easily program that send control to kind of be quieter or louder depending on what you're going into. So if you've got your favorite drive pedal, you can lower the level for one snapshot and get a cleaner sound, and boost it for a solo sound, for example. The mix control is brilliant because you can, you know, like I say, blend in as much gain if you're using a fuzz or, you know, octaves or whatever, with compressors, blend in that original clean signal. That's awesome. For me, the big bonus has always been the trails function, because that really isn't something that you can add to a vintage Space Echo or Echoplex. So the ability to actually add a feature that, if there's any electronics engineers out there, shout up, tell me that you can add a trails function to an old Echoplex. I don't think you can. But if that has, you know, become an integral part of your tone, and you have to use that, and whilst we have one in Helix, you might just love your own because it's an heirloom or you spent a fortune on it or whatever. So being able to kind of have that in the system and add a feature to it is just cracking. It's so good. Obviously, there's the added benefit with Helix of the switches. So if there's a bunch of pedals now where you can actually use Helix to switch a function, so maybe switch a channel or switch a function or whatever, with something like there's a bunch of drive pedals where you've got two sides and you've got two different inputs, so you can actually separate them. You just have those in sort of two different loops within Helix, and then you can swap them around, move them about, see which one feeds into what really nicely. So yeah, effects loops, really versatile, really simple, but maybe not something that you've considered. So if you've got a pedal lying around, chuck it in a loop, give it a go. Remember, if it's an old Germanium pedal or a new Germanium pedal, you're best going in the front. If it's very loud, just be aware of going into the global preferences and putting that pad on. Otherwise, you're just going to clip the input and it might not sound very good. So look, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope everyone is safe and well, and we've got another one of these coming up next week. I believe we have the marvelous Tony Campanovo. So tune in. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for keep coming back. Have fun. See you again soon. Cheers.